what I have up here, I'm willing to bet that 99% of you set up your quote unquote SEO tab in your CMS, Sanity or otherwise, more or less like this these days. You have your tags, your description, you have your open graph overrides. What if I told you that you should actually be doing it like this with social previews, pre-flight, and actually managing all of your content and technical SEO directly in Sanity as a part of your publishing workflow, as opposed to treating it a little bit like an afterthought. Before I get into that, I do want to talk about technical versus content SEO. Some of you may already be familiar with this. If you are, I apologize. Feel free to tune out for a minute here. But I want to talk about the difference between these two and how they interplay with one another. So technical SEO, it sounds really cool. It's all about the implementation. So the code side of SEO, essentially, the things that actually go into the code that Google, Bing, whatever other search engine will look at from a structural standpoint. Things like speed, metadata, structure of pages. What does that include? That includes the metadata, the title, the description, like I said, the open graph tags, alt tags on images, structured data, so JSON LD schemas, if you're not familiar with those, it's a JSON formatted way of describing a section of a document. Mobile friendliness, also more commonly known as responsiveness. Page speed, so things like time to first byte, first contentful paint, largest contentful paint, cumulative layout shift, and Google's newest one, interaction to next paint. And then things like link validity. Are all of the links in your content lead to pages that return 200s, no 404s, no 500s, no redirects? Essentially, are all of the links valid, up to date? On the other side, you have your content SEO, which sounds a little less cool, but is all about the written content, the quality and the frequency of your posting. It's focused on things like keywords, composition, the freshness and the engagement. So it includes things like how consistently you're posting, how frequently you're posting. Are these things up to date? Is the quality of the content very high? Using various metrics of content quality, looking at how similar it is to other content. Things like the uniqueness of the content. Is the content unique? Are you an authority? Is your site an authority on that particular topic? Do you go particularly deep through several different articles? And then other things like keyword relevance. Are the things that folks searching for what they're engaging with on your website? Are the keywords that they search for and where they land on your site, the links they're clicking, the pages they're viewing, relevant to the keywords that they searched for? Do they stay on the site for a long period of time, or do they bounce relatively quickly because the content isn't relevant? So with those two things in mind, technical and content SEO, Google has, of course, a ranking algorithm. Some of you may have seen a bunch of news recently about the quote-unquote leak of the algorithm, which included a lot of different factors, all the different factors that Google includes in its ranking algorithm, the different weights that it holds. Essentially, technical makes up for about 30% of that algorithm, and content makes up for about 50% of the algorithm. Keep in mind, obviously, it's only 80%. There's another 20% that are other factors, domain authority, backlinks, third-party sources that are factored into, social sources, etc., that are factored into this. But net, about 80% of your site is ranked against these technical and content factors. So what does it mean to bring technical and content SEO into your Sanity Studio? And do you want a caveat here? Your writing can't totally suck. This is sort of assuming that you're starting from a baseline where you have writers and editors that are producing good content. And this is supplementary to continue to improve upon that, actually allow you to then validate some of these factors, so these technical and content factors, before publishing. So why do we care? Well, this is why. I mean, this is a screenshot from Ahrefs, but fundamentally, the health of your website, how it ranks, the number of backlinks you get, the organic traffic, the organic keywords, the overall search performance of your website is based on these factors, these technical and these content SEO factors. So 80% of how your site gets ranked is based on the performance of what you're actually putting out there. And that's why bringing it into your Sanity Studio is important. So why do this in your CMS? There's lots of different ways that folks manage their content, the quality of their content, the keyword performance, the technical side of things. A lot of times that happens outside of the CMS right now. You have secondary tools, you have the developers managing a good chunk of this work. But should you do it in your CMS? Yes, actually. Why? There are a lot of rules to validate. On the technical side, on the content side, you have all of these different factors that you want to validate, you want to verify before your content goes live. Rather than publishing and checking after the fact and then having to republish or update drafts, being able to do that stuff directly in the CMS means it becomes part of your editor's workflow, your writer's workflow, as opposed to an afterthought. There's a lot of tools to automate validation. We have third-party APIs we can reach out to. We have the entire studio that can be customized for this purpose. And your team's time is really better spent actually creating the content than trying to fuss around with third-party tools and building things in other places. Keeping them in the studio means that their energy can be streamlined. And then most importantly, developers have cool dashboards, so why shouldn't content editors? So I've been calling this CI/CD for your content. For those of you that don't know what CI/CD is, or those of you that are not super familiar with the actual expansion of that term, it's continuous integration, continuous deployment. Really what that is, it's essentially for developers, and a lot of you here are developers, I would imagine. It's an automated process designed to streamline the creation, testing, and deployment of applications. It looks like this, sort of like the short version of it. On the left, you have CI. On the right, you have CD. And it is essentially, for better or worse, a sort of infinite loop of how you build and deploy software continuously and give yourself the ability to verify, validate, and continuously build new components. Why can't we just do this for our content as well? Well, we can. Sanity content creation, really, the only thing we need to change here is rather than coding, we're writing. But you're still planning, you're still building, you're still testing, you're still releasing, you're still monitoring your content after it goes out. At the end of the day, especially on the web, your content is very much a continuous deployment. We're going to talk about the CI side of this today. So we're going to talk about the writing, the building, the testing. So how do we do that in Sanity? Let's talk about writing first. The basics, if you will. You have your page titles, you have your metadata, you have your open graph tags, right? We talked about these. Typically, it looks a little bit something like this. You have your SEO tab, you have your meta with your titles, descriptions, keywords, which most search engines don't typically use these days, but doesn't hurt. You have your open graph properties, your title, your description, social image. What if, instead of just having these open fields, we went a little bit further? So what we actually have built into Sanity using their AI functionality is the ability to automatically generate some of this metadata for us. So we gave it some instructions, asked it to generate an article summary, and have it automatically spit out a description for us really easily. You can do that for your titles. You can do that for the keywords. You can even do that for the open graph section of this as well. But it allows you to streamline that process. Now let's go a little bit less basic and start talking about the build part of the process, which is the part I actually get really excited about. So within that, let's talk a little bit less basic. One of the things that folks do a lot of the time, I've seen a lot of our clients do, a lot of folks that we've worked with do, they'll put together like the OG tags, they'll set up a title, a description, a preview image, and then there's no real great way to test that until you publish the content. So what we actually have started doing is building into Sanity a social preview. So we set this little plugin up that lets you take a look at the Google results, the Facebook result, the Twitter, now X, preview, and the LinkedIn sharing preview. What that does is actually pulls the OG data that's set up in the editor and runs it through the site. So that preview image is automatically generated based on the draft data in here using the OG image generator that we have set up in the adjacent next app for the site itself. But it lets you actually preview this live so you can make changes and actually see what it's going to look like before you publish. The live social previews are really nice. They allow you to, eliminate common mistakes, missing titles, missing descriptions, badly formatted images. You can, like I said, double check your images, double check your titles, actually how they're going to look when it goes live. And you can share some visual references with your marketing teams. It's something that I've seen come up a lot. What's it going to look like when it gets published before they schedule it on Twitter, before they schedule it on LinkedIn, before they schedule it on any of these other social services. Being able to actually preview these before they go out is a huge boost and a huge performance enhancement to these teams. And last but not least, going back to what I said sort of at the beginning here, keeping your editors in the studio. The more you can keep them in the studio, the better, the less they have to go out to a third-party tool or publish and test. So we're still in the build section of the CI flow, but let's talk about another thing that we've done. I think a little less basic, content audits. So this one's a lot of fun. We've started building out some functionality, again, using the AI assist that Sanity has, to actually review the articles, review the content in Sanity directly. We give it a set of instructions, look at the grammar, look at the spelling, look at a set of keywords or the clarity of the writing or editorial standards. Does it align? And actually give us that feedback. The AI assist will give you that feedback. And the nice thing is you can literally click right in. It'll give you the breakdown and you can copy and paste some of these edits directly back into your content. It's just a regular Sanity field. So this gets stored. You can actually come back to these reviews later on, or you can rerun it if you want. But the nice thing is that they automatically allow you to check your grammar and spelling against best practices, or if you have particular editorial standards to work against. You can have it also automatically identify opportunities to improve keyword usage so that even if you wrote this in, say, Google Docs, you brought it in, it can now review it and say, hey, you're missing these 3 or 4 critical keywords, or you have these 3 or 4 keywords that we don't use on the site and have them recommend removing them. It also streamlines the editorial, gets your folks to actually do a first pass without having to go to a human editor, which saves the editor saves some time in terms of editorial, where it doesn't have to go to a marketing manager. You get a first pass completed, it comes back, and then that final pass can be a human editor, but it has at least gone through one full quote unquote robo review, if you will. Now, let's talk a little bit about test. That's the last step in the CI flow. This is a little bit more advanced, but this goes back to what I had showed at the very beginning. The preflight checks. Essentially, preflight checks being, does everything work? Does everything validate? Does everything meet the technical SEO standards necessary to publish this content? So I look familiar. We've built a preflight plugin that allows folks to actually do link checks. So what you're seeing here is basically it'll check all the links in line in a particular piece of content. It'll validate that all of them are returning a valid 200, not 404ing, not returning a redirect, not a 500. And you'll see, for example, that second one there is an invalid URL. It'll actually show you that it's incorrect. You can go back and correct that right in your editor, making that part of your workflow, as opposed to getting the inevitable email that a lot of us probably have gotten of, hey, that link in the middle of your article doesn't work. We also have an SEO audit. And this is actually a really cool integration. We integrated with a tool called Data for SEO, which has an API that allows us to run about 51 different checks. Some of them more valuable than others, but net, basically, this allows us to run an audit against a draft version of the content, it'll actually go and reach out to the preview page, review it for things like loading time. Is the page redirecting for some reason? Does it have the right canonical? Does it have an H1 tag? Does it have the right meta tag set up? It'll actually review the content sort of as it'll look when published. And then you can do an entire pass, technical SEO pass, if you will, before even hitting that publish button. And it's nice because you can, again, make this part of your workflow. If something's broken, you can actually go back to, say, your technical team, go to your devs and have them fix something that's wrong with the page, go to your content, make changes, add missing metadata, or report a bug to your team if something's not showing up correctly. So what do Preflight Checks allow you to do? You can, again, avoid dead or invalid links in your content. Super valuable. Number of times that has happened to me, I have lost count. You can validate your page performance against a pre-published draft. So as long as you have a preview version of your site available, you can set up the SEO checks and actually get the page performance validated before it goes out live. Say, page is loading slowly. You can verify that maybe you have an image that's loading too large of an image, or you have too large of a file trying to embed itself on the page, or some iframe embed is taking a particularly long time. Very easy to actually check these before it goes out. Again, eliminates guesswork for core technical SEO needs. Your team no longer has to wonder, is everything working correctly? You can just check right in the studio. And then, and we'll talk about this in a second, control publishing ability based on the results of that check. So you can actually build this into your workflow, make sure that these things pass before the content gets published. So where do you go from here? We have all of these pieces. How do we tie that together into the CI workflow that we're looking at? Well, again, we can make it an actual workflow in Sanity. And I'll caveat this. This is a future state. This is something that we are working on. We have all of these individual pieces built, and then building it into the workflow is sort of our next step. But Sanity has this really great workflow plugin. Now, if you've ever looked at it, it's a great example to sort of a jumping off point. But you can build out a workflow so you can have content that's in review, changes requested, approved. You can build that in a completely different workflow depending on how what your editorial process is. But it's fully extensible, which means that you can require validation for fields. You can set up the transitions from stage to stage. And so you can make sure that all of your fields are valid. And then we can tie in a feedback check, make sure that the content has been audited, but automatically before it goes to a human editor. Make sure all of the pre-flight checks are passing before it goes to a human editor. We can build these pieces directly into that workflow and make sure that by the time a second person or a third person is looking at it, or before it gets published, it has actually been reviewed completely, automatically, with all of these pre-flight checks and all of these audits as a part of your workflow. So you know that when you're publishing something, the content and the technical SEO are at least at the baseline validated and make sure that your standards are being met. So that ties all the way back around to this workflow, where we have you plan your content, you write your content, and you use Sanity to build and test your content before you release. You deploy your content, you manage that content in Sanity, and then you monitor its performance. What else could we do? There's more we could do. There's plenty more we could do here. Let's talk about a couple things that we haven't explored yet. There's opportunity to do more, go further with the AI rules. So those automatic content audits, you could have them review for certain editorial standards if you have in-house editorial standards for content, or things like AP or Chicago style standards. You can have it review for those specifically and provide feedback. I know a lot of folks use page builders, usually those block content to build out different sections of a page. You can have those introspect. You can have the audits introspect those individual blocks and make sure that the content within them is all valid and meets SEO standards. You can also have recommended fixes or automatic resolution of problems. There's certain things that would be automatically fixable, and have the system make recommendations and have them auto apply. If a lot of you use like Prettier as your coding, great way to do that. And then tie in something like Ahrefs or SEMrush directly into the dashboard. Actually let folks see how the content's performing directly in the studio is a big opportunity that we haven't tapped yet. I want to thank you all. I'm Josh. I do things at Planetary, that little red square up in the corner. We build sites for evolving companies. Thank you.